London, 13th of June, 1944. The Blitz is over, and the German air raid isn't everyday life anymore. Citizens of London were alarmed when the air raid siren started, though in the sky there were no Heinkel bombers. There were small flying objects that made a terrible droning sound until the engine cut out. Silence, then an explosion. The name of these objects was the V1, or Vengeance 1, and they were the first unguided rocket-propelled bomb in history. Thousands of V1s were directed to London, up to 100 a day, and caused mass destruction. In total, the Germans fired over 9,000 V1s against England, with 4,500 hitting their targets. One of the reasons why only half of the rockets fired against England hit their targets was the low speed of the V1. It was a cruising missile, which meant it was launched from a ground platform and cruised to the target. Because of the low speed and predictable flight pattern, British anti-aircraft emplacements were able to shoot some of them down, though this was hard. Interceptors did a better job because the British Spitfire and American P-51s could fly faster than a rocket. The Allies could even bring a V1 off course without using any ammunition by flying up close to the flying bomb and getting their wing under the V1's wing, and then pushing it off course by gently tipping the wing. This was dangerous, not only to the pilot, but those who were on the ground. About 1,000 V1s were crashed this way. On the 8th of September 1944, the fear of the V1s disappeared, not because they weren't dangerous anymore, but because new bombs of terror started to fall from the sky, these ones hitting London up to 3 times a day. The name of this rocket was the V2, or Vengeance 2. This new weapon was far more deadly and effective than the V1 because it wasn't a cruising missile, but it was the first ballistic missile ever created. A ballistic missile is a modern missile, today most famously used in the form of nuclear warheads. This kind of weapon was far ahead of its time during 1944, which made the V2 the fastest moving projectile in existence up to that point. Ballistic missiles have a far greater speed than cruising missiles, and the V2 had a maximum speed of 4,000 miles per hour. The speed made it impossible by the Allies to shoot down the V2 because it flew at over 4 times the speed of sound. About 1,200 V2s were fired at London with deadly precision. The man behind these weapons was named Wernher von Braun, and he had even more crazy rockets in mind. All the rockets that Germany created both before and during World War II were gathered under one project named Aggregat. Therefore, the rockets were named A1, A2, A3, and so on. The technical name of the V2 was the A4. The first rocket, the A1, was designed in 1933, shortly after Hitler took power in Germany, by Wernher von Braun in Kummersdorf, a small army research center. The rocket was small, 1.4 meters, and was only tested once. On that first and only flight, the A1 blew up on the launch pad, and no more tests were made because of the design being unstable. The next rocket, the A2, was essentially the same as the A1. One major change made by von Braun was to move the stabilization gyroscopes to the center of the rocket, which made it more stable. 2 A2s were built for testing, and both successfully launched. The A3 was more effective than the A1 and A2 because it had a pointy top and a better engine that was more effective, though when tested in full flights, the A3 didn't work at all. Multiple failures, one after another, led to the final decision to abandon the project. After many years of failure, von Braun now had the weapon of destruction that Hitler wanted, the A4, or V2. This is one of the only rockets in the project that was mass-produced. When the A4 was test-launched straight up, it reached outer space, and with that was the first human projectile to ever reach space. Nazis in space. The A-10 rocket was designed to reach the US, which was quite stunning considering that most planes couldn't make it to Newfoundland to Ireland, let alone Germany to New York. It was a two-stage rocket with the A-10 as a thruster, used to give the actual bomb some speed. After some time, the A-10 would release the A-9, which from there would carry itself to the target on the other side of the pond. Because of Hitler's order to make something that was able to reach and inflict damage on American soil, a lot of resources were given to this project, though not enough time. Therefore, there are advanced blueprints of this rocket made, though no actual rocket. The Germans even built test stands for the A-10 at their main rocket research center in Peenemünde, Germany. Since the rockets didn't have the guidance system to land or crash the rocket in America, the final decision was to make it piloted. The pilot would be guided on his way to America by radio beacons on U-boats and in weather stations in Labrador and Greenland. In 1945, von Braun knew his time working under Hitler was at an end, and that his fear of being executed due to war crimes against London and slave workers in labor camps would be overlooked due to his knowledge with rockets, which both the Allies and the Soviets were now keenly interested in. Since they were more hospitable, he surrendered to the Americans during Operation Paperclip, which was an American effort to round up all the Nazi rocket scientists and equipment they could find. Von Braun's war crimes were ultimately forgotten due to his expertise in rocket science. With both American and German rocket scientists in NASA, he would go on to develop many rockets for the US and was a key part in the Gemini and Apollo missions, though that is a story for another time.